Greetings, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin, and
we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our subclass tier ranking for the Cleric in the 2024 Player's Handbook.
The Cleric in the 2024 Player's Handbook has been given 4 subclasses, and we are going to see how they stack up against each other. We're going to be pitting them against one another, not against subclasses from other classes. There's a lot to discuss today, so let's get rolling.
Our Cleric tier ranking is sponsored by Grim Hollow Transformed.
This is the latest project from Ghostfire Gaming featuring a total refresh of the hit Grim Hollow setting, compatible now with the 2024 core rules.
Grim Hollow features the godless world of Atharis, where even heroes become monsters. The campaign has 2 massive books coming, both the campaign guide and the player's guide, each containing everything you need to ground your game and make your choices matter.
Make characters using the new Monster Hunter class, over 40 dark fantasy subclasses, and 12 transformations allowing characters to become things like vampires or werewolves.
And you can also delve into the lore and factions of the expansive dark fantasy world of Atharis.
The campaign is launching soon, but in the meantime, you can join the VIP Discord. You can leave your mark on the Grim Hollow as part of the playtests, and you can even test the Monster Hunter class, heritage system, and transformations, and lock in your set of Grim Hollow metal dice.
So if you want to delve into the dark fantasy world of Grim Hollow and bring that to your gaming table, you can't do any better than the world of Grim Hollow. So follow the links down below to support the campaign before it launches.
And now, let's talk about some clerics.
So up on screen, you're going to see right now the criteria that we use when we conduct our tier ranking of the subclasses in D&D. Starting things off at the S tier, this is where we rank subclasses that are potentially overpowered and have abilities that can dominate common adventuring scenarios because of the way they change the class in game-changing ways.
When we look at the A tier, this is our favorite place for a subclass to lie. They have strong benefits that are applicable in combat and exploration or social interactions. Maybe not all 3, but at least 2 of the 3 is pretty good. They're going to offer great synergy when combined with base class features, skills, feats, and spells. In general, A tier is going to be performing well, really no matter how you play them, and is always an excellent choice.
B, on the other hand, really depends on how the build is set up for the character. It's usually very viable, and it contributes to most pillars of play quite well. And a B tier subclass can potentially feel S tier in terms of its power if it's in the right campaign or the right party composition. But there's a lot that just depends with the B tier on on having the ideal circumstances for it to work perfectly. But even then, it's always viable.
A C tier is a subclass that has niche features which will rarely come up in play unless a very specific build or combination is used. Oftentimes, a C tier subclass will have the potential to be good if you build it right, but also may have a high opportunity cost which requires some trade-off to function properly.
And D tier, we do not recommend playing a subclass that falls into the D tier. Its features are seldom useful and they don't synergize with the base class features or other spells or whatnot. It often can be a trap, which by playing into what the subclass wants you to do makes the base class weaker. It's almost like you're basically better ignoring your subclass features entirely and just using your base class features with a D tier subclass.
So with all that in mind, let's kick things off with the Life Domain Cleric. At level 3, you're going to gain Disciple of Life. Now, whenever you cast a healing spell, you get to add 2 plus the spell's level in hit points additionally to the person that you're healing.
So you get an extra 3 points on a Cure Wounds or or something like Healing Word, but something like Aura Vitality is going to get an extra 5 points, or like those high level healing spells will get more. This just makes healing spells way more efficient.
An important part of any cleric subclass is going to be their spell list, because all of these spells are going to be always prepared for that cleric. The Life Domain Cleric is going to get Aid, Bless, Cure Wounds, Lesser Restoration, Mass Healing Word, Revivify, Aura of Life, Death Ward, Greater Restoration, and Mass Cure Wounds. Here's the thing. All of these are already available to the cleric.
Yeah.
I will say there is a benefit to opening up the option to choose other spells for your prepared spells, so you get to choose more utility, more niche spells. So that is the benefit. It's not a bad spell list. It also just isn't the most exciting spell list.
Yeah, and like, okay, this is the spell list where half the spells are spells that I would always prepare anyways as a cleric, and half of them are spells that I would never prepare. Right? So like, I always want aid, bless. I usually always want lesser restoration and revivify. Death ward's pretty good. Greater restoration I might prepare, but I feel like I like divine intervention for when I really need greater restoration. I don't really like mass healing word and mass cure wounds.
Yeah.
I just don't find I need that much healing all the time. Like, it's not as much, but yeah.
As a life domain cleric, this spell list makes sense. I have no real complaints about it, other than the fact that, like, it would have been cool if there were spells on here that clerics don't normally get, but I also don't know what those would be. Maybe a druid healing spell. I don't know. I don't know what I want. It's like a B tier spell list.
Yeah, nothing here is bad. It's just there's nothing like that you're salivating over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Channel Divinity Preserve Life is pretty cool. It's a magic action to restore 5 times your cleric level in hit points that you distribute to bloodied creatures within 30 feet. So at level 2, when you get this, it's 10 hit points that you can spread out to people. In most cases, like at level 2, that'll take, if you give them all to one person, that'll take a bloodied level 2 character back up to full.
Yeah.
Right? They do have to be bloodied though. So eventually this Channel Divinity, like at level 10, it's 50 hit points.
Not bad.
That's a pretty decent amount.
This is actually one of the better healing options in the game.
Yeah. And at level 11, that's when Heal comes online. Heal is 70 hit points for 6th level spell slot, whereas now this is at 55. So eventually your Channel Divinity is restoring more hit points than the heal spell.
Yeah.
But it has to be a bloody target, which by that point...
I mean, usually I wouldn't be using it if they weren't bloodied.
Yeah.
Now, at level 6, we're going to gain Blessed Healer, which now you can heal yourself when you heal others.
Not a lot, though.
It's not a lot. I mean, this ability is fine. It's like a little bit of extra icing on the cake. It's like you're saving the party, and hey, you get to give yourself a little pat on the back as well. Yeah. So, but that's really all it is.
And clerics don't get their last feature till level 17, Supreme Healing, and at this point, all your healing dice are maximized. So
that's cool.
That's just the max. I mean, at this point, you know, you've had options. The big thing with the Life Domain Cleric is pairing Aura of Vitality, which is on the cleric spell list now, with the blessings of the healer. So you get to restore a ridiculous number of hit points for a 3rd level spell slot. The Life Domain, they're the best healer in the game.
They are the best healer in the game, but this is a game where healing has generally been not the most important thing. It's also, they're not the only healer in the game. Being the best, and this is I think where the discussion happens. Being the best is diminished in importance depending on the party you're in. If you're the best healer, but you're in a party with a bard, a druid, a paladin, and a cleric, and you're like, I'm going to be the Life Domain, there's no necessity for a Life Domain cleric in that party.
Yeah, I feel like the Life Domain cleric is really good in a situation where they're the only person in the party bringing healing, and you have what I would define as a brawler dungeon master. So this is the type of dungeon master that is not happy unless the party got really badly beat up in every combat.
It's also good if your party composition is like you have a barbarian, a fighter, and a monk. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you guys are just going to be running in and beating things up. I'm going to be back here making sure you're alive.
Yeah, and I think that as soon as you have like party members that are more of the battlefield control type that are going to be being like, well, we don't want to we don't want to take damage at all. So we're just going to banish and mind control and wall of force all of our enemies, and we're not going to take any of that damage in the first place. Then you're kind of there as the Life Domain cleric being like, but my healing. And they're like, thanks, but we're not hurt.
Yeah, nobody got hit.
Yeah,
which
right?
can happen.
Yeah, it can, and I mean, it's a little bit more balanced in the 2024 rules, but still, the incentive is still there that avoiding damage altogether is better than healing that damage back up. And generally speaking, the damage output of the monsters, it's unlike like an MMORPG, it's not possible for the cleric to keep up with the incoming damage. There's no need to keep the party topped up.
Yeah.
Right?
You're keeping them from zero.
Yeah.
Or bouncing them back from zero, more likely.
Exactly. And so in a lot of cases, all the party needs are like some healing potions and a couple people with healing word, and you're pretty good.
Yeah.
Right? And so I feel that while the life domain absolutely has, as we've said, the honor of being the best healer in the game, healing just isn't the best strategy overall. And and how necessary it is varies greatly on your party composition.
And that's why I think that the Life Domain Cleric gets a B ranking from me, because there are party compositions, there are DM play styles, and there are adventures where a Life Domain Cleric could be the most important party member ever. But then there's also all of those options where you have a very kind DM who hands out a lot of healing potions readily. Thank you. And, who maybe doesn't play as violent of a game, and you have a party who doesn't take a lot of damage, and you're doing like an intrigue campaign with a heist mission and things like that. It's like, what's the Life Domain Cleric doing in that campaign? Not a whole lot. So for that reason, I think it's a solid B tier. It can be amazing. It can also be not amazing.
Yeah, I think as a DM, like it is nice having the Life Domain Cleric in your party when you're the DM, because you're like, okay, I can really like,
I can throw two dragons.
I can just knock the tar out of the party, and I don't really have to worry about it because they're going to bring them back up. And it's I can't undersell that. Like, that is really, really good. It makes the party very, very resilient in combat, but it is still just through healing. And I have seen a Life Domain Cleric get out damaged.
Yeah.
In the middle of a battle. Right? Because yes, at a certain point, like, the amount of healing that you can throw down does sometimes not quite catch up, especially if it's like a lot of AoEs. Yeah. So I think a B is appropriate. Like, there's a part of me that's like, it's still really good. Is it good enough to be an A? But because it is just baseline good. Like, healing is fine.
Yeah. I think it's a B because it's good, but it's not always the most useful. And there are times that there are times that the Life Domain Cleric is the wrong choice.
Yeah, and it is the party composition that it comes into play.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you have I think that I would say if there's a paladin in the party, Life Domain is overkill.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not like it's a wrong choice, like you're going to be detrimental. It's just you won't get to do the things that you wanted to do as a Life Domain Cleric.
Yeah.
You're going to still be doing the things, just not as well as if you were in the right party.
Yeah, and it's not that I wouldn't even say it's about not as well. It's just it at a certain point the healing becomes redundant.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Moving on to the Light Domain Cleric, these fiery boys like to blow things up with their sun god magic and cleansing fires. Right away at third level, they get Warding Flare, which personally is one of my favorite abilities I've seen in play at my table. Being the DM at that table, Warding Flare, so what it does, you use a reaction to give disadvantage on an attack made by another creature. The amount of times that Warding Flare has thwarted my big attack or my big move to save a party member or used in like those perfect moments, I always, as a DM, I know what this feels like as a player, so I never was upset as a DM, but the amount of times that I let out a little grumble when I was like, and I'm going, oh, look at that. And he's like, nope, Warding Flare. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, come on.
Just remember to use it
before I roll.
Before you roll.
I roll. Yeah.
Yeah, before the DM rolls, because it's a little bit bad for, like, you can't use this to negate a crit.
No. But I would be like shaking the dice and it'd be like disadvantage.
it is kind of tough. Like sometimes it does feel like when you have the light domain cleric in your party as a DM, you're like, hey cleric, I'm rolling the dice now.
My light domain was on top of it. As soon as the dice was clacking, he'd be like, disadvantage.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, ah.
Yeah. So the light domain spells are really fantastic. We got Burning Hands, Fairy Fire, Scorching Ray, See Invisibility, Daylight, Fireball, Arcane Eye, Wall of Fire, Flame Strike, and Scrying. Now, admittedly, a couple of these are already on the cleric spell list, but most of them are not.
Most of them are not, and most of them are just like the most fun, blowy uppy spell in the game.
Yeah, like fire, or just like really useful. Like Fairy Fire is a really, really good buff for the party.
Arcane Eye.
Arcane Eye is very useful.
Incredibly useful.
Wall of Fire is great for when you don't want to be the locus of the spirit guardians, but you want to have that damage out there. Fireball is Fireball, right? Like
we love Fireball.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I don't need to always have Scrying prepared, just like I don't always need See Invisible and Arcane Eye, but I'll accept it. Like I'll take it, right? I think that Burning Hands and Scorching Ray do kind of drop off, but they're fine. I'm just happy with Fireball. Like, just throw in a Fireball. And if
you could have just put in bold letters, you can cast Fireball, and I would have been like, nice.
Would have been happy. This is giving you spells that you would not normally have.
Yeah,
which is great,
and really brings to life the themes of the character as well.
And the level 3 power is just another Fireball-y type thing. It's a magic action, Radiance of the Dawn, to do 2d10 plus your cleric level radiant damage to creatures within 30 feet. They do get a con save for half damage, but this adds up. Like, it's still never as much damage as a Fireball, but it's not bad, and it's smart because like it only hurts your enemies. It's not like you're blowing up everybody around.
No, this is like calling down holy fire upon your foes only. It is the cleansing flames.
And what's great about this is that you can use it in any combat. Like there's just never any. It's radiant damage. Very few creatures are resistant to it. It's always going to be useful to just throw down more damage without expending a spell slot.
Improved Warding Flare. Now, when you use Warding Flare, you actually bolster up the creature that was being attacked.
Most critically here, you're giving them temporary hit points as well as the Warding Flare uses come back on a short rest.
Yeah. So that just makes this feature that I already love even better, because even if they roll with disadvantage and they still hit, you've basically shrugged off that damage with the temporary hit points that you've just granted the creature that's being targeted.
Well, I think of it like this. If you have a wisdom of 20, generally speaking, most combat encounters are going to last 3 to 4 rounds. Mm-hmm. So you can very reliably Warding Flare several times in a combat and know that it's going to come back on a short rest, right? And then the temporary hit points are just gravy, because if they still get hit, like if the Warding Flare doesn't turn it into a miss, the temporary hit points are going to help absorb the damage.
Yeah. And if they don't get hit, then they just have extra hit points.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. This is where when you compare to the life domain, the Warding Flare is kind of single-handedly beating out the life domain, because it's giving us an additional resource to protect our allies, and like a single missed attack can be more prevented damage than a casting of Cure Wounds will ever be.
And a single miss attack plus a boost of temporary hit points is just better than healing.
Yes.
So I love Warding Flare. I think it's a great ability. At level 17, they get Corona of Light, which they can use a magic action to emit sunlight for 1 minute. Enemies have disadvantage on saves versus fire or radiant damage, and they regain all their uses on a long rest. That's their kind of big ability at the end there, which means that they're going to have disadvantage on saves against most of your stuff.
Disadvantage on Sunbeam.
Yeah. Disadvantage on Fireball, disadvantage on Sunbeam, disadvantage on your Channel Divinity. So, just disadvantage, handing it out like candy. I really like the Light Domain. I think it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun subclass to play, and it does exactly what you want it to do if you're playing a blastery cleric.
It was so much fun. Honestly, this is one of those cleric subclasses that was very true to its form in Baldur's Gate 3, and having Shadowheart with it in BG3 was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Warding Flare all day, every day.
Yeah, totally. Here's the thing. It's really good.
Yeah.
But it's not oppressively. Like Warding Flare is borderline. Right, but it's still only one attack once per turn because it's still a reaction.
Yeah.
Right? It's not so oppressive that it's like all the time disadvantage everywhere. I think that the light domain is very solidly A+ territory.
I absolutely agree. It's my personal favorite, but also we know that like my first foray into D&D was being a wizard who was obsessed with Fireball.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why there's the meme of Fireball.
Yeah.
And it's because it's just fun to cast spells that do a boatload of damage on the battlefield during combat. And playing a cleric who gets all of the cleric goodies, you can still be the support, you can still be the healer.
Mm-hmm.
But at the forefront, you can be an amazing fiery damage dealer. It's fun.
Yeah. I think on your point specifically there, it's really cool to play a cleric that can do all the good cleric stuff, like buff your allies, heal them up. But then when the battle is rolling, you can still throw a fireball.
Like I can still throw Bless, I can still throw Spirit Guardians, but then I can throw a Fireball as well. Like who doesn't want to do that? Yeah. So I think they're definitely an A-tier subclass. I think they're an excellent choice without breaking the game or being too powerful.
Yeah, I don't think that they're so like there's no combo here that takes this into the S tier.
Yeah, they are just good at what they do. Yeah. They are perfectly viable, and at no point do you feel weak, but at no point do you feel like you're stealing the show.
Yeah, and remember, like, as we're going through these rankings, like, it's important to note that, like, we need to be like, this is potentially overpowered to get into the S tier.
Yeah, S tier is not always a good thing. It actually might mean that it's a problem for the game. We love an S tier subclass, but there can be like S tier that still is fun for everybody.
Yeah.
But then there can be those S tiers that are like, ugh, you're taken away from everything else at the table. The light domain cleric does not take away from everybody else's performance at the table.
So let's look at the trickery domain now.
Oh, this one's tricky.
Indeed, this one is tricky. So first of all, our blessing of the trickster at level 3, magic action to grant one creature advantage on stealth. Basically, it's forever until you use it on somebody else. So it's just pick somebody in your party, either you or someone else, advantage on stealth.
What I like about this, hand it to your rogue, but also if you need to sneak in with the rogue, hand it to yourself. And or if you're in that party and you're actually pretty decent at stealth, which you could build a cleric that has light armor and
criminal background.
Yeah. But let's say that you're in that party, as we always find ourselves with the stupid fighter who has heavy armor and is ruining stealth, give them advantage.
I mean, you're going to have a lot more tools here because the trickery domain spells are going to give you even more options for that, because it comes with charm person, disguise self, invisibility, pass without trace, hypnotic pattern, non-detection, confusion, dimension door, dominate person, and modify memory. In case you're missing it, none of these spells are on the cleric spell list.
And they're all, I'm trying to think, they're mostly amazing.
They're mostly amazing.
Yeah.
Confusion,
not my favorite,
is not that great.
Non-detection I don't
very
use
niche.
very often.
Very niche.
But basically everything else. Modify memory is also somewhat niche.
It is, but everything else
is great.
Stellar.
Is superb.
Disguise self is amazing. Invisibility is great both for yourself and upcasting. So again, you're having a problem with the fighter, blessing of the trickster, make them invisible. You're still having a problem with the fighter, pass without trace, blessing of the trickster. Right.
Yeah.
Pass without trace on the cleric is kind of what?
Yeah.
And hypnotic pattern remains one of the best battlefield control spells in the game.
Yep.
For just incapacitating a whole bunch of enemies. Dimension door, again, if the fighter is having trouble, just grab him and teleport.
Yeah.
In.
So many ways to deal with your annoying fighter who ruins stealth.
So we've got invisibility, we've got teleportation, we've got illusion, we've got battlefield control, we've got mind control.
I just love even having disguise self might be
Yeah.
might be a great reason to take the actor feat
Yes, or just make sure that you've got proficiency or expertise from
in
something in
deception.
deception. Yeah,
Yeah.
and stealth. Yeah.
There's a lot of cool ways to play with that. At level 3, we're also going to get our channel divinity, which is invoke duplicity, the classic Loki style, make a duplicate of yourself. And what I love about this is you can create the duplicate, you can move the duplicate, or you can do other amazing things such as cast spells with your duplicate as the point of origin.
This is super cool. Now the duplicate, in addition, is intangible. It doesn't occupy its space. It doesn't have an armor class. It doesn't have a hit points.
Cannot be destroyed.
It basically can't be destroyed, and it mimics all your movements exactly. So it's a little hard to adjudicate, like, to what extent is this thing going to be eating attacks from enemies? Right? Because
it's up to the DM to decide how. I would definitely play into the
Yeah.
intelligence of the monsters. And like, if you're fighting silly little goblins, I would let the cleric get away with it and have
Yeah.
multiple goblins trying to attack this thing.
because that I think is how much this thing can just soak attacks from the enemy is a big determiner of how powerful it's going to be. If a lot of enemies fall for it and attack it instead of you, it very quickly becomes much better. You can cast spells through it, and it can be effectively you. But what you can't do, at least my interpretation of it, is you can't make spirit guardians come from it.
Because Spirit Guardians centers on yourself.
Yeah, so an emanation spell still has to be on you.
I think.
In most cases. I think. So I don't, but you can do weird things with it. Like, there are certain cleric spells that have a range of touch, like inflict wounds. Like, it can deliver inflict wounds for you. Yeah.
I also just love the shenanigans that you can get up to. Like I do picture the Loki scene, and I'm wondering if there's a Gorgon charging at me and I have a duplicate of myself in front of a pit of lava, and I just stand there taunting him, and then he charges right through me into the pit.
Yeah.
What can I do? A creative player is going to have a blast with this.
Yeah, especially because you have invisibility.
Yeah.
So if you make your duplicate and then you cast invisibility on yourself,
and while they're standing there taunting the enemies, you sneak in and grab the MacGuffin and
one thing to note though is that your illusion, your duplicate doesn't speak through you, and you still have to use your own senses. So if your duplicate's if you're talking and you're invisible, your voice is still being heard from you.
Oh no.
Yeah. Yeah, so just be aware of that.
Right? Unless I get the magic mouth spell.
Yeah, you'd need some sort of
and get them to hold.
Well, this is where you could take the telepathic feat and then telepathically talk to people so you wouldn't have to speak.
Right.
Yeah, that could be
there's always a tricky way past
Yeah, there's always a tricky thing. At level 6, you get a big upgrade here, Trickster's Transposition. So you can now teleport to swap places as a bonus action whenever you create or move the illusion. So a really simple thing with this is that you just create the illusion across the other side of a pit and switch with it.
Yeah,
right.
It's easy. I mean, there's also reasons why you can actually put yourself into a situation and then either or use your duplicate to go in and then switch places with them. I'm even thinking if you do cast Spirit Guardians and then you run in with your duplicate left behind and then you run in, damage everybody, and then pop back out.
I love it. That's so good.
Yeah.
And then at level 17, the illusion gets upgraded. When it disappears, it heals a bunch of people. It can heal stuff. But now allies gain advantage when it's within 5 feet. So here's kind of the thing about the low level feature of it is that you get advantage on attack rolls if you and your illusion are within 5 feet of a target.
Which kind of implies a melee attack for you, or a melee spell attack.
It kind of that element makes you want to take the blessed strikes and take some sort of sneak attack sort of thing.
Bonk.
But you wish that was happening for your allies at level 3. Because here's the thing: if the illusion was giving advantage to your allies starting at level 3, I think this would be S tier.
But because you have to wait until level 17. coming to the end of this, I think the Trickery Domain is a solid A+.
I agree.
I agree with you that if at 3rd level, all of your allies gained advantage on attacking something within 5 feet of your duplicate, that would be bonkers. We all would love it, but it would be S tier.
Yeah.
And it may be, I mean, the thing is that is an S tier ability that would actually benefit from creative
Yeah, it's like the level 17 feature coming online at level 3.
Yeah,
Of course it would be S
but
tier.
it does imply collaboration.
Yeah.
Which means that it wouldn't be a bad S tier. It wouldn't be like the, oh no, you're stealing the spotlight, because you're actually inherently sharing the spotlight by doing it.
But the thing is that clerics now have enough uses of channel divinity that it's very reliable to have this power out every combat.
Yeah.
And like, here's the thing. Every combat this Trickery Domain Cleric is making people invisible, mind controlling enemies, hypnotizing them with a hypnotic pattern, and teleporting around with Dimension Door and their own sort of thing. Like, this is definitely also a cleric where you probably want to take something like Fey Touched, so you have Misty Step as well.
Yeah.
And you have all this weird mobility and all this cool skill use as well. And I think it's a really cool play style overall for the cleric.
I think the Trickery Domain Cleric lends itself really well to creative players.
I agree.
The more creative you get with their abilities, especially Invoke Duplicity, the better it is, and the more fun you're going to have.
Yeah, it's just not doing anything that is... If you were able to give out advantage to your allies, or you were able to teleport your allies with Trickster's Transposition, we'd be having a different conversation about this thing being in the S tier.
But I think A is the best place to land.
Yeah.
I think having 2 A tier clerics is good. That's good for the game.
The only thing I'm going to question is, are we selling short casting spells through it?
I think A+ is still a solid place. Like, it's not trouncing on the other cleric subclasses. It's not overbearing.
Yeah, because like, it can cast your spells through it. So like, touch spells, it is an expansion on the range of what are traditionally short range cleric spells. So that is cool. But I just can't, and it is intangible. So like, I see the argument for it being S tier.
Yeah.
I do. I just think that it relies on a lot of assumptions. If it is able to have spirit guardians coming out of it, and your enemies are constantly trying to attack it instead of you and doing nothing, then that is it's almost like kind of like the bad faith interpretation of it is S tier. But I think a more measured and realistic approach to how it's actually going to play out at most tables, it's more A tier.
That's fair.
Yeah.
As we come to the war domain, the battle priests, these guys like to be on the front lines, smacking things with a holy mace. More likely, you can pick anything. But the war domain cleric starts off with war priest. Now they can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. They can use this a number of times equal to their wisdom modifier, and it comes back on a short rest. So reliably, in most combat encounters, you can get a few times where you get 2 attacks when it's most necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish that you just got extra attack as a war domain cleric.
Same here. I wish, immediately, I wish that this was the one that had the Blade Singer style extra attack.
Or at the very least, if this was just you can use a bonus action to make a second attack, not limited. The fact that it's limited means that I'm actually probably only going to do this if I have to go through 2 combat encounters before I get a short rest. I'm probably like at level 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I'm only going to have like a plus 3, plus 4. So it's not a lot. It's not a lot of uses of a bonus action attack.
Yeah. It can be good. Like, this is another one of those features that I think is interesting with multi-classing for another class that already gets extra attack and wants to use heavy weapons instead of dual wielding.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's now bringing in multi-classing, which we're trying not to talk about.
But and it's any weapon attack, so it can be a bow.
Yeah.
So you could shoot people with it. The other difficulty here is of course with all clerics, you got to solve the ability score problem of like where you're going to put your wisdom, and are you going to attack with strength, or are you going to try to do something like get true strike or shillelagh so that you can use your wisdom for your attacks, right?
Yeah.
So, but going on into the spells, we get Guiding Bolt, we get Magic Weapon, we get Shield of Faith, we get Spiritual Weapon, we get Crusader's Mantle and Spirit Guardians, Fire Shield, Freedom of Movement, Hold Monster, and Steel Wind Strike. So, there's a few things that clerics don't normally get here, like Crusader's Mantle and Steel Wind Strike.
Steel Wind Strike is great.
Yeah, I think it's fun. Again, a lot of these are already on the cleric spell list. So Spirit Guardians, Spiritual Weapon, Shield of Faith, Guiding Bolt, Magic Weapon, all these are already there.
Yeah.
Hold Monster's pretty good.
Love it.
Fire Shield can be pretty useful. Crusader's Mantle is not a bad buff for your party, but usually I would rather, like, Crusader's Mantle is extra radiant damage for all your party members around you, but you've had Bless for several levels, and usually I would prefer Bless for the accuracy boost than the damage boost from Crusader's Mantle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's a few good picks here. I mean, having Guiding Bolt is probably going to be on every cleric list, but hey, at least you're freeing up a spot, I guess. When you get your Channel Divinity, you get Guided Strike. You get to add +10 to an attack roll on a missed attack. If you're using this on your own attack, you don't require any action to do so. If you're using this on an ally's attack, it's a reaction. But either way, I like that you don't actually have to use this until it has already missed, and then you can say, no, I'm adding +10 to that. Again, because it's a Channel Divinity, you do have a few uses of it, but you're going to want to wait to the specific moment where this is going to be the crucial attack, probably, let's say, on your Paladin who is smiting a Fiend, or your Rogue who is about to land a brutal sneak attack and misses. That's when this is going to be really beneficial.
Yeah, especially if it's an attack. I also think that this is also good when it is that desperate situation and you need to make the hit happen. War Domain also gets another Channel Divinity at level 6 called War God's Blessing. This allows them to use their Channel Divinity to cast Spiritual Weapon or Shield of Faith without a spell slot. And when they do so, that spell doesn't require concentration anymore. This is cool because it is giving us 2014 Spiritual Weapon back.
Yeah.
Or giving us a concentration-free AC buff.
Yeah. Both of which are cool. So this is the only cleric subclass now that can do Spiritual Weapon paired with Spirit Guardians. Or Spirit Guardians with extra AC to run up in melee.
Or all of the, like, I guess you could, if you wanted to, just keep spamming this. And you
could use both Channel Divinities to do Spiritual Weapon and Shield of Faith.
You could have multiple instances of Shield of Faith. So you could be boosting multiple parties' ACs.
Yeah, true.
There's no reason for you to really have multiple spiritual weapons because you still can only attack with one of them at a time.
Yeah.
Right? But having +2 AC on multiple people might not be bad. And then at level 17, we're Avatar of Battle. Resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
All minions are going to suck against you.
Although I will also say we've been seeing a trend though of very high level monsters not doing a lot of bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage and starting to have like psychic damage attacks and force damage attacks. And
again, this is like for the minions. Your main enemies are going to still be hitting you, but you're not going to care about the zombie horde in front of the Lich.
Yeah.
They're going to be doing very little.
I have a lot of problems with this subclass.
You know, there was part of me that was really excited about this subclass, and I don't think it's a bad subclass, but I do think it's a traffic jam of a subclass.
Yeah, because the Channel Divinity War God's Blessing, you want to get Spiritual Weapon out there.
Yeah.
And what do you have to do to make Spiritual Weapon useful? Use your bonus action. What also uses your bonus action? The War Priest feature. You also have to solve for how are you going to have a good spell attack modifier so that all the spells that you have that use your spell saving throw DC and your spell attack modifier that are based on your wisdom, those all need to be good because you want to use them. But then you also want to have a good attack bonus for melee attacks at the same time. So this is one of those depends on the build thing because it's like, okay, did you get Shillelagh or did you get True Strike?
Yeah.
Or are you building your ability scores carefully so that you got a good strength and a good wisdom, dexterity and wisdom?
I also think not only are we hogged up for bonus action use, but we're also, with all of the other subclasses, the phrasing that we use is you have a decent amount of channel divinities. You have enough that you probably will be able to use one once per combat. That actually becomes a problem, and it feels the opposite on the war domain. It feels like we will never have enough channel divinities. Half of this subclass is channel divinity options. Yes, the +10 to an attack is one that you can be more situational on. But there is no combat encounter that I do not want to use spiritual weapon or shield of faith without concentration.
Yeah.
But if I'm using that in every combat encounter, I'm probably going to be scared to use the guided strike for fear that that's going to make it so I cannot use my war god's blessing in the next combat encounter.
So we got 3 problems. Fighting for what your ability score, what your ability scores are, or you have to solve that problem. Fighting for uses of your channel divinity. Fighting for uses of your bonus action.
Now, all of that to say, I want to throw out there, none of the abilities are niche. They're all useful.
No.
None of the abilities are detrimental. They actually do add to the cleric in an interesting way.
But we can't use all of our abilities together in a synergistic way. Like this is the thing, like all the other subclasses, you can be using your spells, you can be using, like the Trickery Domain loves having its channel divinity out and doing all of its spells. Like it can be using all of its benefits and features all together at the same time. Whereas the war domain is this traffic jam that can't use, like, I wish that there was a way to benefit from War Priest and War God's Blessing at the same time and Guided Strike from the same time without feeling like I was expending all my resources, or like you can't stack them all together.
And I think, so for the reasons mentioned, again, with the idea that it's a clunky traffic jam of a subclass, but it's a traffic jam of really nice cars. So
yeah, I see it.
You're stuck in the traffic jam and you're like, wow, these are a lot of nice cars. I wish that they could all go through this traffic jam.
Yeah.
But they can't. And for that reason, I think it's a B. But it's a weird B, because it's a B where I don't know where the build that makes this S tier is, and I don't think there is one. It's more a B in the fact that there's nothing bad, but it's not a very synergistic subclass.
Yeah, I just know, I don't know whether you're better, because again, the first thing that I don't know is whether you're better to get Shillelagh or True Strike.
But you want one.
You want one or the other, because with Shillelagh, you can use a quarterstaff, which that's the whole, like, style point wise as a war domain. I don't want to use a quarterstaff. I want to use something. I want to use a weapon.
I mean, I also, you know what else I want? 5 levels of fighter or paladin.
Well, and this is where, again, the build thing comes in, because if you're going to take 5 levels of fighter and you're going to get extra attack, and then all of a sudden all these features start to look really good.
Yeah.
Right? Because honestly, like a 3-level dip into this on a fighter that has a good wisdom score that is going to be using a greatsword, then that's great, because then that's turning your bonus action into a greatsword hit.
Yeah.
Right. Which is pretty good. Right. But again, so for multi-classing, I think this is really good. Right. And I think we saw that a lot before with the war domain, that it was pretty good multi-class fodder. But of course, I don't know if you'd multi-class far enough into the war domain to get the War God's Blessing. I think you're just taking the 3 levels to get War Priest so that you can drop a couple extra bonus action attacks. Right. So, and then I think as a single class cleric, like I could see doing the True Strike build where you get True Strike with wisdom, you use your action to attack with True Strike. You're getting all of the like Blessed Strike buffs on True Strike, plus the extra dice from True Strike, and it's using your wisdom. And then you're using your bonus action to swing with Spiritual Weapon, and you're just never using the War Priest feature.
Yeah.
You just so like that's the issue here. It's like are you regularly using War God's Blessing to throw down Spiritual Weapon and just never using Guided Strike and never using War Priest? In which case, congratulations, you didn't get any level 3 features from your subclass.
Yep.
Right?
Which feels bad.
Which feels really bad.
So
yeah,
it's tough. I think it's a B-. I'm going to give this a B-.
Yeah.
And
but yeah, I think that's the, like, if you're going single class Cleric, I think that's the optimal way to play it, is to just only use War Priest and Guided Strike when you are, like, you don't have anything else to do with Spiritual Weapon.
Yeah. Let's look at our final rankings.
Yeah.
I think that we kind of covered it, but I do want to talk about this, though, for a second. So A tier, we have Trickery and Light. Trickery feels like the highest A tier.
Yeah.
Pushing into S. And then B tier, we have Life and War, with War almost dropping into C, but I don't think it's quite bad enough to be a C tier.
No.
But that means that we end up with 4 relatively good subclasses.
Yeah.
And this is similar to what we saw with the Fighter, where the Fighter is just well-balanced. Now here we are with the Cleric, very well-balanced subclasses, no matter what you choose. Even if somebody out there is saying, how dare you talk poorly of the War Domain? It's my favorite subclass. I think that if it's your favorite subclass, play it. You're going to have a great time. And I think that's clear in the rankings that we've seen so far. Life, War, Trickery, Light, all of them are viable options at the table.
Yeah, I don't think that we have yet seen anything in 2024 that approaches, like, busted strong.
Or terrible bad traps.
Yes.
Which is good.
So that remains to be seen, because, like, the Clerics have the potential for some really, really powerful things, but I don't think yet, under things that have been released under 2024, that we've yet seen anything. There's nothing in the player's handbook that I would say for the Cleric that is blows the doors off all the others S tier.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't think it goes that far. And I don't think there's anything that is truly bad.
And, like, even though the War Domain probably has the most complaints out of any of these, I can't say that any of its abilities are niche.
Yeah.
I can't say that you have to do a certain, like, you want to use all of its abilities. The problem isn't that it's a bad, I mean, the problem comes with the overall design of the subclass, not so much whether the abilities are awesome.
Yeah, I think for me, the War Domain would, if you move things around and gave the War Domain, at level 6, it got Blade Singer style extra attack. So, like, you got 2 attacks, but you could use one of those attacks to cast a cantrip instead. And that was its level 6 feature. And it just had the War God's Blessing for concentration-free spiritual weapons starting at level 3. And the Guided Strike wasn't a channel divinity.
Just like a number of times per day.
Yeah, but it was more like Warding Flare.
Yeah.
Then we'd be cooking with gas.
I think that, like, yeah, we have 2 A's and 2 B's, but if I had to rank them 1 through 4, it goes Trickery, Light, Life, War.
100% agreed.
Yeah.
100% agreed.
So hopefully that helps you choose your next Cleric subclass. Tell us about your favorite subclass for the Clerics in the description below.
The videos that we make on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please consider becoming a patron of the show. The links are down below.
And if you want to see us adventuring in our world of Drakenheim, you can check out our actual play, which airs Tuesday evenings right here on YouTube. You can check out all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got plenty more coverage on all the subclasses for D&D 2024 right up over here.
Please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and ring that bell so that you never miss an episode.
Thanks so much for watching. See you next time
in the dungeon.